Imagine walking along a sun-warmed shoreline, a fresh breeze in your hair, when someone points out a dark hole in the limestone and says, quietly, that there is a pool inside and a tunnel beneath the water. That small, casual suggestion is the moment curiosity catches fire. It sounds harmless. It sounds like adventure. It sounds like a story you will tell for the rest of your life, until it becomes the story you wish you had never told at all. If you like deep, true cave stories that make you think twice about what lies beneath, subscribe now so you never miss the kinds of videos that explore the thin line between wonder and danger. This first story begins with two friends on vacation who thought they were answering a local legend, not stepping into a hazard. They were young, excited, and untrained. They carried little more than snorkels, a couple of handheld lights, and the kind of bravado that leads people to tell themselves they will be careful. They found the mouth of the cave, which opened like a secret in the cliff, and they leaned over and looked inside. A straight drop led down into darkness. It was taller than it first appeared, a long, vertical shaft that demanded respect. But they had come for a thrill. They climbed down wet, slick walls, each foothold taking them deeper away from sunlight. The bottom opened into a room with a still pool at its center, a smooth, black mirror reflecting nothing but the beam of their lights. That surface was quiet and cold, but it hid a more complicated underworld, narrow passages and small air pockets threaded like beads through the submerged passages. They swam into the first tunnel with the sort of care that feels brave when you tell the story later but was not backed by training. The passages pinched and widened, the walls close enough to feel like they would press you flat if you stopped breathing. When air pockets appeared above them, they surfaced and gulped the thin, stale air as if it were a prize. The routine worked until their fins stirred the silt on the floor and turned clarity into cotton. What had been clear became opaque in an instant. Light turned to a smear. Hands and lights became useless. One hand could not find the other. One set of lungs could not find the rhythm of calm. In a fraction of a moment the map of the cave that had been in their heads dissolved into panic. One of them touched an air pocket and broke the surface too fast, striking his head on a jagged rock as he surfaced. The pain cut through fear, but the sight of real breath, actual oxygen in his lungs, was a kind of salvation. He clung to a narrow ledge, the air around him stale, tasting of stone and metal. Above hung nothing but rock, and below the water pressed on his shoulders like an expectation. He was trapped by geography and by a mind that was starting to race. The other friend, who had returned to the entrance pool, called and shone his light through the tunnel until his voice was hoarse. Time stretched into a long, slow terror. What saved them was a decision to trust a faint point of light. The trapped man took his mask, turned off his light so his eyes could be drawn to any distant glow, and pushed through the cloudy water toward a distant shimmer. He found it, the other's lamp, a small bright circle that felt like home. They pulled themselves back into sunlight and climbed out of the shaft like men who had been given back their names. When they stood again under an open sky, the ordinary warmth of the sun felt miraculous. The cliff and the pool had not changed, the difference was the understanding that curiosity without preparation can carve deep lines into a life. That simple, terrifying episode has the same anatomy as many cave incidents. An alluring entrance, inadequate preparation, failure to use a guideline, and then the betrayal of the cave itself in the form of silt and disorientation. It is a pattern that repeats because caves are patient teachers who never speak until their silence is all that remains. Our second story is darker and more complicated because it involves a professional team descending into a river that runs beneath the earth. A group of experienced cave divers had a plan, to survey and place equipment deeper in the passages, to leave staged air supplies for future teams. Among them was a man who was both technician and teammate, entrusted with a rebreather, a device that allows a diver to breathe recycled gas for a longer time than an ordinary tank, but one that requires steady attention and exacting maintenance. On a morning when the roped guides and lights were checked and double-checked, he entered the water and followed the guideline into the deep. These divers were not taking a leisure swim. They were operating at depths where the water is cold and the pressure is a constant, heavy presence. They moved with purpose, placing stage bottles and orienting themselves by line. Then, in a single instant, the operation went sideways. Something happened that forced one diver to surface in an uncontrolled way. In that moment of chaos, he struck his head on rock, his breathing system flooded, and suddenly his control over the one instrument that kept him alive was compromised. His teammate tried to help, but the symptoms appeared quickly: violent shaking, loss of control, a seizure likely brought on by too much oxygen under pressure. An oxygen seizure underwater is the kind of medical emergency that cuts out the very thing a diver depends on, the capacity to manage equipment and stay oriented. When a diver convulses, there is no way to ensure the breathing device will remain properly in place. Attempts to help can be heroic and heartbreaking at once. The teammate held him, tried to clear the water from his breathing tube, and fought to keep the line and the emergency systems in place. The pair sank lower, the floor sucking at them, the lights smeared and useless as their efforts stirred silt into a cloudy abyss. There are moments when a rescuer must weigh the chance of saving a life against the chance of creating two victims. Those moments are the cruelest currency of cave diving. A decision was made above the water to stop active rescue attempts and to prioritize the safety of the rest of the team. That choice is not a cold calculation, it is a hard, human answer in the face of low odds and rising risk. Recovery teams later located the body at depth. Those who knew him remember a careful, skilled diver whose life was devoted to exploring the margins between land and sea. The loss was not just a number or a report, it was a ruinous hole in a family and in a team. This incident forces us to examine the technology at play. Rebreathers extend range and time underwater by scrubbing carbon dioxide and adding oxygen as needed. They make long, technical dives possible. But their very complexity means that a single failure at depth can cascade into rapid, catastrophic problems. Breathing gas mixes for deep dives require precise calculations. Exceeding safe oxygen partial pressures can include frightening symptoms, confusion, tunnel vision, unusual noises in the ears, and, at worst, seizures. In an environment where every second is precious and every surge of panic drains finite resources, a single medical episode becomes a life-ending event if the team cannot stabilize the situation immediately. The third story takes place in a cave system that is vast enough to challenge what we think of as exploration. In one region of the Yucatan Peninsula lies a labyrinth of flooded passages and cenotes that explorers have been mapping for decades. The system is enormous, formed of dissolving limestone and ancient rivers that predate human memory. Within that web, a group of experienced divers planned a careful penetration into a familiar section, with one team laying markers and mapping a path while another team followed and turned back at a planned point. They used guidelines and colored markers to signal the route, and the group split into two teams with a plan that felt sound. At first, everything went according to plan. The lead team marked junctions and moved through the tunnels. The conditions at the entrance were calm and clear. But at a critical intersection, the second team, following the markers they believed to be correct, took the wrong line. In a place where multiple passages can look like mirror images, a single wrong choice sends you away from the exit. They swam farther and farther, following walls and light until distance erased the way home. When they turned back, a marker they relied on was not there. Markers can be helpful, and they can be misleading when teams remove them because they assume others have followed the same path. The divers found themselves in colder water and began to stir silt into ghostly plumes. Panic crept in, and with panic came faster breathing and faster emptying of tanks. Partners split up, searching for the path they once knew, and one diver ran almost completely out of air and started sharing with his buddy in desperate rotation. Rescue teams on the surface realized something was wrong and plunged back into the cave with extra cylinders. They found two of the lost divers barely alive, with tanks almost empty and voices thin. The rescuers went back for the others, following light through narrow tunnels. In the dim glow of their flashlights they found two figures floating near the ceiling, motionless. Two divers had died after exhausting their air. This incident is a devastating example of how the best-laid plans can fail when small assumptions become fatal. Markers removed, a wrong turn, an over-reliance on visual cues, these are the slips that take teams from confident to desperate in a short span of time. Cave systems like these are beautiful and ancient and utterly indifferent. they have passages that repeat themselves and intersections that all look the same. Without absolute redundancy, without clear guidelines and strict turnaround rules, the human mind will make errors. When those errors meet limited gas supplies and the fog of silt, the result is too often tragedy. After these stories, there are bigger questions to consider than whether the individuals involved were careful or foolish. The deeper truth is this: caves are not merely physical spaces. They are settings in which a small number of simple factors, preparation, equipment, training, and team discipline, determine whether an expedition returns with stories or with sorrow. The lure of the unknown is powerful. The tactile human thrill of going where few have gone is intoxicating. But that appetite for discovery must be married to rigorous procedure, clear lines, redundant gas, conservative turnaround rules, and the humility to turn back at the first sign that the plan is unraveling. What does that humility look like in practice? It looks like turning down an invitation to enter a cave without guideline or permit. It looks like training beyond weekend certification, practicing buoyancy and line work until it becomes instinct. It looks like respecting the limits of modern equipment and understanding that devices that extend range also extend risk. It looks, above all, like listening to the quiet warnings that appear long before catastrophe, a flicker of doubt, a partner who is unusually quiet, a marker that looks out of place. If you are watching this and you have never been cave diving, treat these stories as both a warning and an explanation of why the sport requires such discipline. If you have experience, you already know that the rules are not arbitrary. They are the accumulated wisdom of people who paid, in time or worse, to learn them. For those who love exploration, the right response to these tales is not to give up wonder, but to deepen respect and to carry the lessons forward. Now, before we finish, consider the human side of every rescue report and every recovery. There are family members who wait, teammates who second-guess the last radio call, and communities that rally and then remember. There are organizations that analyze accidents not to assign blame but to extract lessons so the next team goes home. These tragedies have real consequences, driving changes in training and in how teams manage risk. They sharpen procedures, refine equipment checks, and strengthen the culture of conservative decision-making. If this video left you with questions, you are not alone. Ask yourself which part of these stories feels most unsettling, and why. Was it the careless confidence of two friends on a holiday, thinking a cave could be explored with snorkels? Was it the deep technical failure during a professional survey, where sophisticated equipment and precise procedures still met an unpredictable event? Was it the small miscommunication in a famous cave system that turned a routine dive into catastrophe? Each scenario reveals a different lesson, but all of them point to the same thing: the margin for error is narrow, and the consequences are uncompromising. If you want to see more deep explorations into real cave incidents, how teams learn from them, and the hard lessons that make exploration safer, subscribe and turn on notifications. If you found this account gripping, like the video to help others find it, and leave a comment with your thoughts. I want to know what you think. Which moment in these stories struck you the hardest? Would you ever consider cave diving after hearing these accounts? Or do these stories cement the idea that some adventures are better left to the experts? Thank you for listening to these stories. If you want me to research any particular cave incident more deeply, tell me which one and I will dig into the reports, the training protocols, and the technical details so we can examine exactly what happened and what changed afterward. Please subscribe to the channel for more carefully researched narratives that respect the people involved and seek to learn from the past. Like the video if you felt it was eye-opening, and comment below with the question you would ask someone who had made it back from the darkness.